Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Kassandra and today I'm going to do a pose tutorial on camel pose. So camel pose is probably one of the top 5 poses I would say I struggled with the most in my practice and still have a hard time with. If I think back to like all the classes that I've ever taught, it's probably the one that I get the most complaints about from students. So students will often come to me and say, you know, in camel pose, it hurts my lower back, it's not comfortable, I don't feel like I can go very far. And it can be very confusing because this can happen even to students who normally have a very flexible spine, and I kind of count myself in that, you know, doing things like bow pose, like wheel pose. I can easily do those, but for some reason camel is very, very challenging. So I'm going to show you how to work on bow pose, how to work on camel pose, how to strengthen camel pose, and how to do it in a way that's not painful, because listen, if it's hurting, it's not worth doing and you're not going to want to work on it, right? So, okay, let me just show you what camel pose is and then I'll show you like what's going on and how you can make it more comfortable. So traditionally, camel pose will look like this, hands on the low back. I have a microphone in the way, so I'm just going to move it a little bit, and lifting into a back bend, pushing the hips forward and lifting through the upper back. And then there are like very deep variations of your camel pose. Some people will bring their hands down onto the ankles and lifting up. Some people will come all the way down onto their forearms. I'm definitely not there in my practice at all. And I mean, I just did like a 30-minute class and I still feel like I should be warmer, you know, to do camel pose. It's just a really hard one for me. Okay, so biggest thing that tends to happen in camel pose is that all of the stress goes into the lower back. This was my biggest complaint as well. It feels like it's your lower back taking all of the weight, almost like you're sticking your bum out, you're pushing your belly out, and then you're trying to back bend and you're wondering why it doesn't feel good. The thing about camel pose is we need to stop really. I try not to think about it as a back bend, and I try to think about it as a heart opener. Now, both those things are kind of the same thing, but if you shift your focus towards opening the chest and opening the heart, rather than going into a back bend, you'll go into it with a different energy. So the truth about camel pose is that we're not trying to hinge and push and compress into our low back. Instead, what I'm trying to do is lift and lengthen my spine up, broaden through the rib cage. And I like to imagine there's like a string tied around my chest, tied around the heart, that's pulling and lifting me up towards the ceiling. So it's really not about my lower back. My lower back is just the foundation that's holding me in place, but it's my upper back that's trying to go up and back. So it's almost as if there was, sometimes I'll imagine there's like a pole behind me and I have to go up and over the pole. So foundation of the pose, you want your shins to be on the mat and you want your knees aligned underneath your hips. Now, I normally do this with a block. Having a block in between the upper inner thighs is one way that we can help to protect our lower back in these deep back bends, because we're squeezing and holding onto the block and engaging the adductors. Adductors play a huge role in protecting our lower back, and they also help to properly engage the lower abdominals, and they just make the pose, I don't know, for me it was like a big game changer. As soon as I started to squeeze on a block while doing camel pose, I felt so much better in it. So definitely try it. Some people do it with toes pointed back, others prefer to have toes curled under. Honestly, whatever feels the best for you is fine with me. I don't see a huge difference either way. And this can be kind of intense on the knees, so you can always pad your knees a little bit as well, just so you have a little bit more cushioning. It feels a lot better. Okay, so first thing, I'm just gonna lift so you can see here. Biggest thing that you want to happen is not this. So this is just like my neutral spine. There's a pretty big curve here and the belly is not engaged at all. So instead what you want to do is lengthen your tailbone down. I'm not tucking under per se, but I am lengthening my tailbone down. So keeping really nice engagement through the lower back. And instead of relaxing my belly, I want to pull the navel in and up as I'm lengthening the tailbone down. And those two things tend to kind of happen at the same time. When you lengthen down, this tends to engage. So super firm foundation here. and then you're squeezing your block as much as you possibly can, like really squeezing. Okay, from here, you're placing one and both hands towards the tailbone. Having the palms here kind of helps you to remind your tailbone to lengthen down and your belly to hug in. And then you're squeezing your shoulder blades behind you as if you were going to bring your elbows together to touch. So from here, again, think of reaching the crown of your head up towards the sky. My hips are over my knees, and as much as possible, I want them to stay there. So camel pose is not going back this way. Camel pose, you're almost pushing your hips forward, but maintaining the lift and the length in your chest and in your rib cage as you ease your way back, rather than dumping everything in your lower back. And I mean, I'd like to show you how to not do it, but I don't want to injure myself. So as you lift up and back, and honestly, you don't need to go very far in camel pose to feel the intensity of this pose. But the challenge is, how much can you engage and activate through the adductors? The more you're able to squeeze and hug into the midline and hug your block, as well as lift your chest up and then move it back, shoulders back, the more ease and space you'll find in camel pose. And if you think about it, camel pose is fairly similar to bow pose, right? So bow pose, as we lower down onto our bellies, it's kind of like the same thing. I'm trying to keep my hips over my knees. My knees are shoulder width distance apart, or hip width distance apart, and I'm trying to open up through the upper back, reaching up and back. So it's not my lower back that's taking all of the stress. It's really meant to be a heart opener, a upper body opener. So big into the chest, big into the upper back, being really gentle and mindful of our lower back. And after any kind of back bend, I always follow it up with a twist of some sort. So either a seated twist, just rotating at the spine, or a laying spinal twist. That's a really nice, wonderful counter pose to do to release the lower back, just in case you maybe did go a little bit too far. So I hope this was helpful. Camel pose is hard for me, so I can't really demonstrate like the super advanced variations of this pose, but I really wanted to break down the more, I don't know, like the variation that most of us are familiar with and practice with maybe on a more regular basis. And hopefully this will help you. Definitely use your block. Try it with a block. For me, it made just such a big difference. Keep pushing your hips forward and focus. Think of it as everything for your upper body, upper back and chest. Really let your lower back simply be a solid, steady foundation that anchors you in place. It is not about the lower back jamming and back bending. Lower back isn't actually doing all that much. You want it to go up into the upper back, rolling the shoulders back. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you all so very much for watching this video. If you have any other pose tutorials that you would like me to talk about here on my channel, please leave me a comment down below, give me your requests, and I'll try to film something for you guys. And of course, please do subscribe. Just hit the red subscribe button if you don't already. It's just a really wonderful free way to support free yoga on the internet, which I think we all totally love and appreciate. All right, have a wonderful day. Namaste.